All right, so for this game, we have a couple of things going on. Basically, we have people, we have days, and we have time slots, and each person is going to have to be assigned to a day and a time slot. Now, in terms of how to set this up, there's a couple of ways that all of which are reasonable to some degree, and to some degree they probably all have kind of drawbacks. So one approach that you might have taken here is to set this up based on the time slots running across the top. And then you can set it up with kind of two tiers, one tier for Thursday and one tier for Friday. Now, the thing is, anytime you have a sequential component in a game, a major kind of driving force in terms of how to set this up should be to kind of keep the sequence visually there. In other words, you want to be able to see the sequence move from one side to the other as consistently as possible. Now, to a large degree, we're doing exactly that on this setup. But there is a bit of a break, because you'll notice that what happens here is that if you have 3 o'clock on Thursday, the next time slot is effectively all the way over here, which would then be 1 o'clock on Friday. There is a bit of a sequential break in terms of the movement from kind of left to right. Now, again, it's not the end of the world. You can always kind of keep track of that mentally, but it is something that, at least visually, is a little bit counterintuitive. Another approach you could have run is that you could have run the Thursday and the Friday kind of as an in and out setup. And there's two approaches you could have taken here. One is you could have set this up as 3-tiered, 1, 2, and 3. Now, personally, I really wouldn't suggest this particular approach. For one, it suffers from the exact same issue, which is that you have kind of that movement going from 1, 2 to 3, but then there's a break, because then Thursday at 3 o'clock would then continue here at Friday at 1 o'clock. Moreover, I generally try to minimize the number of tiers, but I guess that could be just a matter of personal preference. Another approach you could have taken here to kind of resolve that break is we could have also run the time slots across. So that would have looked something like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, the benefit of this is that you do get to visually see the progression, the sequential progression from left to right, which is definitely a good thing. And for the time slots themselves, you could just run them as 1, 2, and 3 kind of subscripted here. The only real pain here is that you kind of have to keep on rewriting these kind of spaces and subscripts for each setup, which again isn't the end of the world. Personally, though, I would have kind of avoided that by just setting up a sequencing setup with 6 positions, and just kind of setting apart the Thursday and the Friday. So what that means is it would look something like this, where you have basically your Thursday over here and your Friday over here, and then you can set up just a 6-position sequencing game with kind of 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The benefit here is that your reproduction of a scenario just requires lining up another row, and everything else, you still maintain that kind of left to right progression in terms of your sequence. Again, there doesn't have to be just a singular way to set this up, and those other 2 ways are very reasonable setups as well. It's not like it would have broken your game if you went about it one of those ways. But at the same time, this does seem to kind of be the best of both worlds. So from there, let's take a look. We have the elements themselves, which are J, K, L, and then we have M, N, and O. And then we have the rules. So the first rule tells us that J has to be at 1 o'clock, which basically just means that obviously he's going to be in one of these 2 positions. We don't quite know which one. Next, M and N will have to lecture on the same day as each other. Now, the way that you symbolize this might be a bit awkward, but I guess you could do something like M and N are going to be on the same day, in the sense that this little dot that I have here simply implies that they'll be together, in this case on the same day, but not necessarily next to each other. And I guess you can also add a little double-sided arrow here just to show that they can flip in either direction, so they don't have to be kind of in that order. Next, L and O will not lecture on the same day as each other, so I guess in a similar kind of vein we can do something like L and O will be on different days, and again, we'll put a little double-sided arrow just to kind of signify that we don't know which one is the earlier one. Now, actually, we can do a bit more damage with this, because we know that, first of all, if L and O are on different days, that just means that you'll have to have one of them on each day, right? This is similar to kind of an in and out setup where you end up kind of splitting them out, right? You'll have one on each of the 2 sides. And that in itself is kind of powerful, because if we have to have one of L or O on each of the 2 days, and we know that one of your days, we don't know which one, but one of your days is definitely going to have M and N, that means that M and N are basically going to end up with one of L or O. And from there, we can kind of take this a few steps further, because that kind of sets up, in a large sense, who will go with who. So what will end up happening is one of your days is going to have M, N, and one of L or O. And then the other of your days is just going to have everybody else, which essentially is going to be J, K, and the other of L and O. And that's pretty powerful, because that pretty much tells us what's going to happen in terms of the 2 days. We don't know the time slots, to be fair, but basically we don't even know which days are which, to be fair. But at the same time, we know roughly who is going to be with who. Next, the last rule tells us that if L is on Friday, then he will be at 1 o'clock. So I guess if L is on Friday, then we can say that L is going to be Friday 1. And that in itself is also kind of a powerful rule, because that means effectively that if L happens to be over here on the Friday and he's at 1 o'clock, then J will end up at 1 o'clock on the other side. Or alternatively, if J is over here, then L certainly can't be, then L is going to have to go somewhere on Thursday. So that's also something to work with. Next, from there, I guess let's take a look at the question. So the first question that we have here is our exclusion question, question 1, and as usual, we do this by the rules. So the first rule told us that J happens to be at 1 o'clock. So going through the answer choices, A looks good, B is fine, C looks good as well, D is good, and E has J at 2 o'clock. So that certainly does not work. We can get rid of answer choice E. Next, M and N will have to be on the same day as each other. So going through these answer choices, A is looking good, B is fine, C has M and N on different days, so we can disqualify answer choice C. Answer choice D, they are together. Next, we're told that L and O are not on the same day as each other, so answer choice A, they're separated, B, they are separated, and answer choice D is the other one, and they are not separated. So L and O are on the same day, which certainly is not going to work. So we're just down to A and B now. So lastly, if L is on Friday, then he has to be at 1 o'clock. So answer choice A has L on Friday, but he's actually at 3 o'clock. So we can get rid of that. And that leaves us with the only viable answer choice to number 1 to be answer choice B. Next, from there, I guess let's take a look at our local questions. So number 2. If M lectures at 1 o'clock, well, I guess let's see what we can do with that information. So if M happens to be at 1 o'clock, so first of all, we already know that J is going to also be at 1 o'clock, and there's only one other 1 o'clock, which means that J is going to be on Friday at 1. Moreover, oh, wait a minute, I misread that. If M is at 1 o'clock, that doesn't actually tell us the day, which means kind of disregard that. If M is also at 1 o'clock and, as we said, J is at 1 o'clock, we don't know which one's which, but we can kind of split them out. We know that we'll basically have to have M and J taking up the 2 1 o'clock slots. Now, what that further does mean, though, is that L couldn't possibly go on the Friday anymore, right? Because if L goes on Friday, then he would have to be at 1 o'clock, and that's not possible right now. So we definitely know that L is going to be on Thursday, and I guess we don't really know what time he goes, but he's going to be in one of these 2 positions. So I guess what we can do is we can reserve L into one of those slots in between, which means also, for the record, if L is over here, then O is going to obviously be on the other side. We don't know which slot again, but I guess O is going to be in either 2 or 3 there. Now, we actually still don't really know whether the M and the N are going to go on the Thursday or the Friday. This is still consistent with either possibility, but let's see what we can do with what we have. The question asks, each of the following could be true except, so what couldn't happen? A, J is on Thursday, and to be fair, J could go either way, so that seems like it could happen. B, K is on Friday. That also seems like it could happen because that could go either way. Answer choice C, L is on Friday. And no, L we definitely at the very least know is going to be on a Thursday, so the best answer to question number 2 then becomes answer choice C. Next, question number 3 is global. We'll come back to that one in just a moment. Let's take a look at question number 4. So if K lectures at 3 o'clock on the Friday, so if we have K at 3 o'clock on Friday, what does that tell us? Well, first of all, we just said, well, earlier we said, J and K have to be on the same day, which means that J is definitely going to be on the Friday, and since we know that J is always at 1 o'clock, J is going to be right there at 1 o'clock, which now does tell us that L, we can't trigger this guy, because if L was on Friday, then he would be at 1, which he can't do right now. So L is going to have to be somewhere on Thursday, somewhere over here. I guess that does mean that L is not going to be the one with J and K, which means it's going to be O over here. Now, on the other side, of course, we'll have the other guys, right? M, N, and then one of L or O. But we don't really, there's really no actual time-based restrictions on these three elements here, not on Thursday anyways. So I guess these three positions could really go in any direction. It's just going to be M, N, and L, and they're just going to shuffle back and forth. So the question asks, which of the following now must be true? Let's take a look. A, J is at 1 o'clock on Thursday, and that's definitely false because J is actually on Friday. Next, L is at 1 o'clock on Friday. No, L is in fact on Thursday. Next, M is at 1 o'clock on Thursday. Now that could happen, but that's not quite the question. The question is asking us for what must be true right now, so answer choice C certainly is not going to work. Next, N is at 2 o'clock on the Thursday. Again, it could, but he doesn't have to. And O is at 2 o'clock on the Friday. That definitely does have to be true right now. So the best answer choice to question number 4 then becomes E. Next, onwards. Question number 5 is global and number 6 is our modifier, kind of a rule substitution. So let's kind of reset back to the global questions. So number 3 says, which of the following is a pair of speakers who cannot be on the same day as each other? So I guess let's take a look. Answer choice A. Could J and N be on the same day as each other? Well, actually, no. Baseline deduction, we know that J and N are definitely going to be on different days. So that makes A a pretty viable answer choice. Just in case, personally, I'm always a little suspicious if answer choice A is the answer right away. Let's take a look at a few of the other ones. For answer choice B, J and O, well, yes, J and O potentially could be on the same day. In fact, that happened right there. Could we have K and L? And yes, depending on which way this goes, if K and L specifically are on Thursday, then they could be on the same day as each other. Could we have L and M? And again, L and M, they definitely, in fact, over here and over here, they were on the same day. Well, over here, potentially they were on the same day, but that could have happened. E, N and O. And again, N and O potentially could be together, right? So N and O could be together specifically. I guess they would have to be together on the Friday, because if they were together on the Thursday, then J and L would be together, and that doesn't make sense. But either way, N and O definitely could be together. So the best answer choice to question number 3 is answer choice A. J and N definitely cannot be together. Next. Number 5, which of the following speakers cannot lecture at 1 o'clock? So who cannot go at 1? Well, in this scenario, we definitely had both M and J at 1 o'clock, so we can start with that. We can cross off those two, so that gets rid of answer choice C, since we definitely know Martin could have gone at 1. Now, in this scenario, arguably we said there was no real restriction between M, N, and L, so it seems like any one of those could have gone at 1 o'clock. So we can cross off N and L, which would have gotten rid of answer choices B as well as D. So now we're down to answer choices A and E, K and O. And apparently one of these two guys can't go at 1 o'clock. So I guess that kind of raises the question of why wouldn't one of them be able to go at 1 o'clock? Well, I guess between the two of them, O is probably the more restrictive one, because O kind of has that restriction with L where they have to kind of flip on 2 different days. Oh, and wait a minute, and L has that whole thing with if he is on Friday, then he has to go at 1 o'clock, so that might run into problems. So, actually, yeah, here we go. So, if O was at 1 o'clock on a Thursday, then it would have flipped L onto Friday, and L would have had to be at 1 o'clock as well, but then that doesn't work because J would then have to be at 1 o'clock. On the other hand, if we placed O at 1 o'clock on the Friday, then it would have forced J to go into 1 o'clock on the Thursday. And then, actually, that seemed like it potentially could have worked, no? Arguably speaking, couldn't we do that if you ran O over here, and then J would have had to go over there. Now, J has to be with K, and he would have to be with L. So K and L would have split those two positions, potentially. And then M and N would have split those two positions, potentially. So this actually looks like it could work. So we seemingly could have O go at 1 o'clock. Let's take a look at the remaining answer choice. Could we have K go at 1 o'clock? Well, if we have K going at 1 o'clock, oh yeah, that's definitely not going to work, because if K goes at 1 o'clock, that means that, well, we know K and J are on the same day as each other, so K would have to go at 1 o'clock, but then J also would have to go at 1 o'clock on the same day, and that certainly couldn't work. So the best answer to question number 5 happens to be answer choice A. Lastly, question number 6. Which of the following, if we substituted for the condition that L and O do not lecture on the same day as each other, would have that exact same effect on the game? Now, we kind of overrode the rule here because it kind of led us to this particular deduction. But specifically, we're trying to replace the rule that says that L and O will have to go on different days. And of course, as we said, this was the kind of the consequence of that. Now, remember, for a rule substitution question, a good answer choice is going to do two things. It's going to essentially guarantee the result, which is that L and O will go on different days, and it's going to be something that always had to be true the whole time. Let's see what we can do. Answer choice A, J and K lecture on the same day as each other. So, first of all, did that have to be true that J and K are on the same day as each other? Well, yes, because we did kind of split off the board into these two into these two different day setups where J and K were definitely together. So this always had to be true. But then the other question is, if this were true, if J and K were always together, would that have guaranteed that L and O will be on different days? And you'll notice that actually would have, because we know that if J and K are together, and we already knew that M and N are together, then both of those sets would just simply have to have one of L or O associated with them, which means this is actually a perfect answer choice. If we knew that M and N are together, which we did, that was a separate rule, and as per answer choice A, J and K were also together, then it would have guaranteed that L and O would have ended up on different days. So this always had to be true, and this also guarantees the result. So answer choice A is a perfect answer for question number 6. Let's take a look at the other ones, though, just in case. Answer choice B, K and O are on the same day as each other. It's worth noting this never had to be true, because K could have also gone with L instead. So if it never had to be true, this isn't a viable answer choice. That gets disqualified. Answer choice C, N and O lecture on the same day as each other. Same problem. N and O never had to go together. We could have had N with L instead. So that gets rid of answer choice C. Next. J and M do not lecture on the same day as each other. Now, that did have to be true. So we know that the MN had to be on a different day from the J. But then there's the other half, which is, would that guarantee that L and O are going to be on different days? Now, the thing is, that wouldn't have worked because, it wouldn't have been enough in the sense that if all we had is that M and N are together, and then separately we knew that M and N are not on the same day as J, we arguably could have allowed for the possibility that J could have gone with both L and O, in which case L and O could have gone together. The fact that J and K are together here is because we had this rule, but if we didn't have this rule, then J would not have had to go with K, in which case simply saying that J is on a different day from that M and N, that would have allowed the J to still go with both L and O, and that doesn't give us what we want. So answer choice D on that count wouldn't have worked. Answer choice E, K and N do not lecture on the same day as each other. You'll notice that this actually has the exact same impact. It's almost an identical answer choice. If K and N are on a different day from each other, that means that K would have had to be different from M and N rather, but then K also still could have gone with both L and O because we wouldn't have known that J and K are on the same day, so this wouldn't have gotten the result. So the best answer choice here is answer choice A.